Good evening. Right, we're coming on now to do the watercolour version of the owl. I do apologise. I know I was going to do this the other week, but I've had terrible problems with my arthritis in my hands, and I've also had tendinitis as well. So I haven't really been that mobile enough to do any painting. So I do apologise, but hopefully we can make a start on it tonight. So this is the owl, the reference picture. I've got it on my iPad as well. So now the only difference is on this picture I've got here, there's some green. It looks like green reflections here, but I'm actually going to be doing them grey because this is reflecting from the photograph. There was obviously some greenery in the background, which I'm not putting on this picture. So therefore, I'm not actually going to put that as a greeny colour. It's going to be more of a grey, a nice warm grey. There's a lot of light colours on here. If we zoom in, they're quite warm colours, but they do have some nice variations of it. It's not just pure white like an owl. You know, from a distance it'll look white. We've got some nice warm greys in here, which will accentuate the depth of the eye going in, because it's like a disc shape on his face. Then we have some like burnt siennas, and we have some warmth in here, and the slightly pinkish tones, and some sort of yellowish tones around there, but they're warm colour, so it's more like an ochre. And then we've got his beak down here, got his beak here, and then we've got these white tufts coming up there. Now we will be using some gouache on here at the end because there is quite a lot of white. So we've got sort of in his eyes there, you can see we have some white bits coming out. You could do it if you want to. If you've got a steady enough hand, you could do it by negative painting, going around the shape and leaving the white of the paper. But I'll find it much easier just to use gouache on it while we're using watercolour. So we're going to make a start with his eyes. Now the colours I've picked I've got here, these are the colours I've picked. I may change a few of them as we go on. May add some more, but I'm going to use lemon yellow as I do with most animals for the undercoat of the eyes, because I just feel it fetches the other colours through as well. Some cerulean blue for the highlights in the eye, some burnt sienna, which is quite a lot on the owl, French ultramarine, burnt umber, raw umber, some Indian red maybe, and maybe some rose madder. Now the greys that I make up, you can use a shop bought grey if you want to. Personally, I like to make my greys up with the French ultramarine and burnt sienna, or French ultramarine and burnt umber. But also those two colours, either of the browns, the burnt umber or the burnt sienna with the French ultramarine, if you mix them thick enough, you get your blacks as well, because black isn't really black. If you use a black out of the palette, you'll find that it'll be a little bit flat. Now, if you feel like you can't get the mix dark enough, then yes, use a lamp black, but then also put on another colour with it just to give it a little bit of a lift. So it's just not a flat black. So if it looks like a warm colour to you, or it's got a bit of warmth in it, then add a little bit of burnt sienna on top. Not a lot, just a little bit. And if it's cooler, then just add a little bit of the French ultramarine. Now you can do that while you're mixing it, or you can do that by layer. Okay, so we're going to make a start on this eye. So I'm going to start by using a lemon yellow. You could use yellow ochre if you wanted to. I just find that lemon yellow, it's an opaquish yellow, but it's nice because it puts a little bit of glow through into the eyes, into the iris part of the eyes. So that's the colour I'm going to start with. So let me take this away. I've got the image up on my iPad. I'm just going to zoom in a little so you can see me doing the eyes better. A bit more close up. Okay. Now what I've done is I've actually used an erasable rubber and what I've done is I've just lightened off the pencil marks so that they don't show through. These pencil marks are there to show me the direction of where I'm going. Now the eyes are going to be quite dark, so that's not too bad around there. I've got 2 pots of water, one's for clean and one's for mucky. Then I've got my palette, which is here. So let me just zoom out again just so you can see the palette. So this is the palette I use for my animals. I have different ones. I have one for landscape. This is the animal one. And I keep these topped up, and then I've got my colours there. If you don't have to do it, you get used to where they are. You can use this for the mixing, but I prefer a ceramic. So what I'm using is, I've got one of these palettes. Or you could just use a small plate. Now, one thing I suggest you do use is, and what I say most times when I'm doing a watercolour is, for mixing paint, I use a flat brush. So I use this one. This actually is one of Billy Shoal's branded ones. And it's a mixer brush, so it's flat. The reason is, when you have a brush that is a round, so say like this one, if you mix your paint with it, you've got two issues you've got to address. One, if you start mixing your paint round like that in the palette, you'll end up splaying all these hairs, so you'll ruin the brush a lot quicker. The other issue you've got, when you're mixing in the palette, because this is a round brush and it's quite thick, what would happen is that would soak up one heck of a lot of the paint out of the palette. Now, you might not need that much. You might only need a little bit. So, you know, that is why I prefer to use a flat brush. And I use one specific brush that I keep for mixing, and this is the one. So, you know, it doesn't matter if the hairs get splayed, or it's just for mixing. But, you know, a flat brush is a lot easier to mix with. So, what I'm going to do is... I've got a pipette somewhere. Yep. So I'm just going to get some clean water with my pipette, and then I'm just going to put in 1 or 2 drops there. That's it. I don't want it because I want it fairly. I'm not going to be mixing a lot of this colour up. Okay, and then I'm just going to get some of the lemon yellow. Okay. Mix that up. In there. So it's not too thick, it's quite watery, but then just clean my brush off every time. Make sure it's nice and clean. Okay. Just put that there for now. Get my little rag cloth out for wiping my brush on. Okay. So I'll stick that up there so it doesn't. There we go. So for this, I'm going to cover the whole of the inside part of the eye, the iris part of the eye. We're going to start with the as you're looking at it, the eye that's on your left hand side. Okay, we'll start with that one first. So the brush, right? So the brush that I recommend using for this one is, I'm going to use, I've got a Rosemary & Co. Pointed Round Series 301, and it's a size 1. So that's the brush that I'm using. Okay, so make sure it's nice and clean and there's nothing there. Also make sure you don't have any dots of water on your ferrule, because they could spoil the painting, because they may drop onto where the painting is. Okie dokie, so I'm looking very carefully at so this is just going to go basically where the iris part of the eye is, so that's going to be the pupil bit. Just, can you see? Let me move this up here a little bit more so you can see. So that's the pupil part of the eye, and then we've got this highlight here, and then this bit here, the rest of this is going to be the iris. So what I'm going to do is I'm just painting in the yellow. It doesn't matter if you go into where the pupil is, that's fine. Just stay clear of the highlight. That's the important thing. So that's going to go there, and then we've got this sort of, we've got a little bit of, there we go. So, and while I've got this, I might as well just do this side. So I'm doing the other eye as well. So basically it's where the iris is. It doesn't matter if you go into a little bit of where the pupil is. You just don't want to go in where the highlight area is. Okay, so we've got the yellow in, which is the base for the eye. Let me zoom just out a little bit more. That's it, so it's in focus more. Okie dokie. Right, so let me take that shelf out so I can get nearer to the desk. A bit better. Okay. Right, so the next colour, I'm going to keep using this brush for now. So now I'm coming on to mix a dark black, but I don't want it to be a flat black. So I'm looking at the eyes, and they've got some nice warmth in, so they've got a little bit of the sienna in it as well. And the sienna also is going to be in the actual iris of the eye. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix, get my pipette again, a couple of drops in there. I'm going to mix up some of the sienna. Now, because these are the base layer coats, I'm not doing them really thick. I'm just going to do them quite watery. So I'm going to try the burnt sienna and the ultramarine blue, because it's a warmish black. So I don't want a really dark flat black. I want it to have some, but I don't want it to be really thick either. So that's the sort of consistency. But as you can see, it's got a bit of a warm touch to it. It's got a bit more of a warm, of a browny feel to it. It's not particularly black. Okie dokie. So I take my number 1 brush again, ensuring I've got no water on the ferrule, which is this metal piece here. And then I'm just going to roll the brush. Now, how I pick my paint up from the palette is I literally roll the brush and pull it back towards me. That way you're keeping the point on there, and you're also keeping the hairs together. And then I've got a little cloth at the side of me, and I just touch it gently so that I don't have a lump of paint drop off, basically. So for this, I'm going to put this where the pupil is. So that should have dried by now, the yellow, because we only put on a thin layer. So this is the pupil side of so I'm not touching the highlight as such. Okay, and while I'm looking at it, where it goes to the highlight, you can put some little marks in because it's not perfectly straight edged. And then also across this top section here, I'm coming down. Now I'm going to sort of draw in this eye completely. Okay, so that's it. That'll come down there. So as you can see, I'm actually drawing in and just filling in. So if you look, this isn't we're going to be going a lot darker than this, but for now we're just mapping in and putting a base layer in and just doing it as a mapping in. Now what you'll find with these two colours as well, when you're mixing them, the burnt sienna and the blue, you can see they start to separate. So you do have to keep probably giving them another, just keep mixing them up like that, so that, they do stay mixed. And again, pull your brush out and then just dab it on your towel. And then just keep checking your reference and put in this colour where you've got the dark shade. Now, if you notice on this bit on the outside, I'm doing it as a linear and coming outwards, because that's where the eye sort of comes into the where the white feathers meet. So and it's quite dark here, and then we've got a lighter patch, and then we've got this dark, so where the iris ends. So like I said, this is going to be, I'm going to put this colour there because we are going to darken up. So I'm making sure this is as light as, because there's some light patches in the eye just around this edge here. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to make sure that this paint is as light as that, so that when we darken up the rest of it, we don't lose that little bit of light section of grey. And don't forget, watercolour paint does dry lighter than what it is on the paper. So that's that base bit done now. So we need to now put in a little bit of burnt sienna around the iris section. So I've chose burnt sienna. I'm just going to mix them up and just see first whether it's going to be the right colour or if it needs anything else adding to it. So make sure your mixing brush is clean. You've got some clean water. Use your pipette, drop a few bits of water in there. Then get your burnt sienna. Okay. May put a little bit of rose madder in it, just to give it that bit of, because it's got a little bit of. It's not quite an Indian red, but it's burnt sienna, but with just a touch of raw umber in. You can see it's giving it that little bit of light colour. So, because the eyes are quite warm. So again, I'm just picking up some paint, dab it onto my cloth, my dab cloth, and then where I've put the yellow, I can start to add this burnt sienna and rose madder. Whoops, a bit much on there. Move that around. There we go. There we go. So see where the iris is going to be going. Now I'm just going to put a little bit down here in this, where we put the initial grey for down the bottom of the eye there. Okie dokie. So clean the brush again. Let that dry. Well, while that's drying, I'm going to be looking at putting in some, where the highlight is. On this side, we've got some like cerulean blue, which is a bit of a cooler blue. So let me just clear this bit off a minute, and then that's it. Oops. So while I'm waiting, I'm going to just mix up a little bit of this cerulean blue. So again, it's just, I'm not mixing a lot because it's only just a little bit needed for the highlight. So that's the cerulean blue that I'm going to use. And then I may put a little bit of French ultramarine around the outside, or a bit of the grey around the outside where the shadows are, because the light is hitting the eye more or less there in the middle. So I'm just testing to see if that's dry. Just wait a little bit longer, but it should be fine. So if we have a look here, if you can see, so you can see that the lightest part of this highlight is just there in the middle, and then we've got this bluey grey around the outside. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to put this cerulean in and then move it around. Okay, like that. And then while it's still damp, what I shall do is pick up some of that grey that we used before and just tap. Because we've got the blue there, it's going to come out a slightly different colour to what the pupil bit is there. I'm just going to tap around the outer side of it. Then I'm just going to damp my brush, wipe off, and then just literally around this outer bit, just soften it in. So the two colours soften. Okay, and then it's going to be lighter in the middle. Now, it looks a little bit off at the minute because, like I said, these are base layers, so they're the very thinnest layers. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go back over the layers and we are going to darken them. So we're going to be making the paint that little bit thicker. So I'm just going to add some more pigment, because these are quite runny anyway. I'm just going to add some more pigment to it. Okay. And in the burnt sienna and the rose madder, I'm actually going to put just a tiny, tiny touch of French ultramarine blue, because it is a very dark brown that we've got in there. So by adding that little touch there of the ultramarine blue, you can see how much darker that's taken that. Okay, so we've got that there. And then I'm going to mix up. So now I'm going to mix up the French ultramarine and burnt sienna, but this time I'm going to make it, I'm not going to make it as watery, because I want this really, I want it as dark as I can get it, or as substantial a colour as I can get it. Okay. So burnt sienna and black, burnt sienna and blue, I mean. So you can see there, it's gonna, that's a lot thicker. Okay. So that should do for now. Dry the brush off. So I'm sticking with my number 1 brush, nice clean water. Dry the brush off on my damp pad so that I've got nothing on the ferrule. Got a nice brush there. So what I'm going to start with is, I'm going to start by putting in the iris colour first. Dab it on the pad. Etch it round there. And where the pupil is. Okay. And while I've got this on my brush, no, I won't, I'll leave that for now. No, just, right, so that's a bit of the iris in. So it still needs to go that little bit darker. So I'm just going to add another little bit of the French ultramarine to it. Not a lot more, just a bit more. So that's going to make it, oops, drop my brush then. Then I'm just going to dab this in. Take it on the dab pad. Okay. And then we're just going to have to let that dry. Okay. And keep looking at your picture, and then we've got like a light section here that comes around from this iris. So in here we've got a bit of this colour as well, just before we get the dark bit. So I'm just darkening, I'm just going to add some of this into the darker touch area there. There we go. Around there. Okay, okay. So I can see the shape of the eye now is starting to develop, okay? So now I'm just waiting for that to dry, and then I'm going to put in this, this is the mix that I've made up with French ultramarine and burnt sienna. And I did put a little touch of lamp black in it, not a lot, just a little touch. It's a little bit thicker. So this is going to be for the iris and around the darker parts of the eye that you can see. Okay, and then once we've done that, so we're just going to wait for this to dry. Shouldn't take long. You can use a hairdryer if you want to, but I do recommend, if you can, is to leave it to dry naturally. And then we move on and you do exactly the same process with that eye. So I'm just going to pause it for a while, and then we'll come back as soon as we've got it dry. Okay, so we're back again now, and that's dry. I'm going to be darkening this up a little bit more as well. I've still got the number 1. Now then, I'm using this, the darkest mixture that I've mixed up, and if you look, it is a lot thicker than what the other paints were, which is because we are using in a smaller area. And if you look, I've got a test piece of card here, and you can see it's a lot darker. Okay, so I'll just get some of that on my brush, make sure again I tap it on the damp pad just so we don't get any surprises. So I'm going to start here with this, the pupil section. Okay, like I said, this isn't a perfectly straight line across with the pupil, because there are some shadows in this, in the highlight of the eye. And then coming down here, it's dark. So I suggest you keep a really close eye up on your reference photograph. And then we've got this sort of eyelid section here, which is very dark. Okay. So we can put some on there. Now where we've got straight edges or you know, sort of, yeah, direct edges. We want to make sure we get the eye shape correct. And then we've got the darkest bit again coming out of this outside part. And again, it's not perfectly clear line. That comes up there to make that part of the eye. And then around after the iris, we've got this, we have got a dark, crisp dark line. So you want a very good point on your brush for this. And it goes around very crisp, like that. Okay. And then on this, right at this edge, there's a light section there, but then this side here is dark. So we can darken that bit up there as it comes in to the inner section of the eye there. Okay, so you've just got this little, I've left that little bit there, a little bit lighter. Now I may have to go over it with some colour in a bit, but for now I'm quite happy there. Now then, the top of the eye's got the shadow from the, so making sure it's a bit darker. Okay, so we're starting to darken it up a lot now. It's still got to go a lot darker, but that is the beauty of watercolour. The more you layer it, the more depth you get in your painting. So now I'm looking again back at this, the burnt sienna, and I think what I may do is put some more of the blue in it. It's still not quite dark enough, so I may even use a bit of the burnt umber as well in there. So that eye mix, the iris that we had before, I have tried to make it that little bit darker. I'm putting in some burnt umber, which is a brown. It's a more substantial brown, so I'm going to put some of that in there. Okay, tap it on my pad, get my test strip and have a look at that colour there, and then match it up with your reference. Now it still needs to be that touch darker, because there isn't that much, when you look at the owl, there isn't that much difference between the darkest sections of his eye and the iris, but there is some, so we need to show some. So again, just dab it on there and then go where the iris is. Okay. Okay, pull some of that down into there. And then go across the top of the highlight a little bit. There we go. So that's now starting. You can see there's not a lot of it. There is a difference in the colour. This is obviously more aimed at black, and that's very dark. But it's taking a couple of layers to layer it up. So that's obviously making that light patch a little bit too light. So that's fine, because I can pick up just a little bit of the grey, the lighter grey. Just dab that on the edge there, so that just makes that a little bit better. Now then, back to the highlight of the eye. What I'm going to do is I'm just actually going to get a little bit more of that cerulean blue and just go around the outer side of the highlight. Okay, now the little white bits, the flecks that you'll see in his eyes, that will show up when we do the when we come to do the gouache towards the end of the picture. So I'm there, so I've just pulled out a little bit. So if you dry your brush off, clean it and dry it off, and if the paint's still damp, you can actually pull off a little bit of paint. So just along here, there's that bit of a, it's not a highlight, it's a low light. You call it a low light, but just inside this section there is a low light. So that is all right for the eye for now. We will be coming back to it and darkening it up and doing a few other pieces to it. But for now, that is fine. I may just take out a little bit of light out of the middle of the highlight, just to, so I've used a damp brush and just pull some of that out. Okay. Okie dokie. So now you just go across and you do exactly the same with that eye. So I will continue, I'll do that eye and then we'll come back and then we do some base coats on the disc of the owl, and then we can take it from there and see what we need to do to the eye. Okay, so I'll see you in shortly. So just remember that, you know, you're layering up. So your first layer, so you can see the difference there in the colour difference, but it's just the thickness and the number of layers that I put on. And also, if you look, I'm pulling the paint in the direction. So an eye is a cylindrical piece. So, you know, I'm just making sure that everything is coming out from the pupil. Okay, so that's the first layers on there. Okay, you've got the eye shape right. So now we're just going to go back in and we're going to sort of relayer and redarken up. Get some of these layers. So just leave it for a couple of minutes for it to dry, and then once it's dry we can do that. We go back over with the thicker paints that we did. So your first layer of paints, basically you're looking for the lightest tone that you can see in the picture or your reference that you're using. Get the lightest tone of that colour and put that on as your base layer, and then you build it up so that it starts to then take shape, and you give them the painting depth. That's the most important thing. To create something that looks realistic, you need depth in it. So now you can see that's dry, and you can see the pupil. It's not a straight line across. You can see there are, if you look in close up in people's eyes or in animals' eyes, there's always reflections there. So the highlight on that one was right in the middle. On this one, it's at this side. So keep a very close eye on your reference picture so that you know where you're working. So now I'm just going to go back in. So I'm just now going to go in, darken this iris colour up. Okay. So again, it's not quite as dark as there, so I might put in a little bit more blue. Burnt umber, thicken the paint up slightly. Now I'm going to have to wait for that to dry. And as I'm looking at that eye, this bit here is going to be a lot darker. And then we've got the dark part there, so I'll be putting another layer on this eye, obviously. I'm just now going to mark in the pupil, which is coming right around here. Again, I've got some shadows, so I'm looking where the shadows are. Okay. That's the eyelid. It comes back down here. It's actually quite dark in there, so I'm just going to add a bit of this dark area to the iris section. Okay. That comes up there. And then this is quite dark here. Take that up there, like that. And then we've got that lighter area again, so all I'm going to do is take that out and then just sort of pull a little bit of lighter paint, just to take the whiteness off the paper, really. I don't want it to be too white. Now then, in this eye, where we've put the cerulean blue on the other one, right in this corner, I'm going to mix some ultramarine up with the cerulean, because in this corner we've got the reflections of some clouds. So what I'm going to do is I'm putting a bit of a darker blue there, in the shape of the cloud. Then clean the brush off, and then all I'm going to do is soften those edges in with a damp brush and tap in motion, and just soften them in there, like that. And then we've got this lighter section there in the highlight, which is where it is a lot lighter. So if I need to, I can always pull some paint out of there or add some other paint in. Now, again, looking at it, it needs to come, it's got this dark section here. That needs to come out a bit more there. And then here, the pupil sort of, so where that brown, where the iris colour is, it's really dark on here. There's a lot of shadow on that side. Okay, like that. And then I need to get this darker brown in again. Okay, and then just pull some of that up because it's a bit lighter on this side. That's it. And then pull a little bit into that light section there. Okay, so for now, that will do for the eyes for now. So you can see there, we've got the two eyes, but once we put some colour around here on the disc, then we may need to go back and either darken the eyes up. So I'm going to mix up a nice warm grey. So I've used mainly French ultramarine blue, okay, in there, and I've put in some burnt sienna, but I've also put in a little touch of rose madder because it's a warmish grey, but I do want this to be fairly light as well, because it's, like I say, it's sort of an off-white, but you never get a pure white, so it's an off-white. So I'm actually making it very, very watery. It looks a little bit pink on that video, but it isn't, believe me. So now I've got my test paper, and I'm just going to put that on. And then what I will do is I'll hold that against the reference photograph. So let's just put some towards the edge. put it on the edge of this piece here. Okay, so it's on the edge there. And then if we sort of hold it up to the actual bird, I mean, don't forget this is, I don't know, it's picking up a different colour, but that's near enough the colour I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a bigger brush now. So I'm going to move on to a size 4 in the same series. And I'm actually, so I'm going to mix quite a bit of that paint up. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick it up. And then looking at the reference photo, if you look, I'll zoom out a little bit and I'll explain. So if you look, we've got sections here where we've got the grey, and then sections just here, and it's a bit darker in there. And then what you can do is, you know, just pull it out, make it, so you could wet the whole area if you wanted, but I would leave this section. This is the bit that's going to stick out the most white. So you could wet this and then add in most of the paint at that side. And also make sure you pull it in the direction in which the feathers are growing. I'm not going to do it wet. I'm going to do it sort of wet on dry. But what I will do is I'll use a damp brush to pull the colour out towards the edges of the bird. And then we've got this colour down here as well. And then we've also got some of this colour, that burnt sienna colour there. And we've got this dark section here where the bits meet, and then we've got quite a bit of grey here. But to start with, we're going to do the lighter grey, and then we will build up those colours. So using just that light grey, I am literally going to put this, in fact I'm going to wet it. I'm just going to wet the paper around his fur, his disc on his face. So I'm using clean water, and I'm not going to go right into the centre, but I'm just going to go further than where I want the paint to go, because wherever you put paint on where water is, it will spread and soften away, which is what we want. And because we're putting the lighter colour on first, it'd be nice for it to spread, but I don't want it spreading absolutely everywhere. So I will put it at the beginning of this, where the lighter parts are, but I'm not going to go right into that area. But you want it to move in there, so it's got a nice soft edge. I'm just going to do one side and then the other. So this side, I'm going to start off just here. So if you look, I'm just putting it basically where most of that colour, the grey colour is. I'm just going to flick it out in the direction of the feathers, but drop in the main bulk of colour where the darkest section is, which will create the shadow, and then it'll come round here. Okay, and then we've got it coming from here and out down here. Okay, so you still see a pencil line there, but so putting this colour basically all around the outer side of the disc. And then this inner bit where his beacon that's going to be the lighter bit. So I'm actually going to try and leave that for now. But I have wet just past there, just so that the paint will move there and be softer. Okay, and then now I'm going to wet this side of his face. So you can see I've just gone there and round this section here, because, you know, we want the paint, we don't want it to be an abrupt end. I can go over where his beacon is, because that's going to be darker. And then just tilt your paper so you can see, because you don't want water going everywhere. You just want it where you want the paint to go, just slightly past it. Okay. Okay, so, and as I say, you're not going to see a lot of it because it's not the darkest colour, it's the lightest colour that you can see. So you will probably only just see it. You won't see a lot of that colour. So on here, it's mainly around this section here, and I'm pulling the brush into the direction of which the feathers are going. Okay, and then it's going to come all the way down here. I'm going to cover where his beak is because that's where it's dark. It's going to be dark up here. So I'm just actually going to tap that bit in. Okay, and then we've got the feathers sort of coming round here a bit darker. So it's a bit darker down towards the bottom in this section here. A bit darker there, and then it obviously gets lighter as it goes out. So you can see I'm pulling the brush, so it will create some of those textures. You can see we've got some odd lines there, so you will get some of the texture of the feathers as they come out and round. So if I zoom in, you should be able to see. There we go. So you can see there, look, we've got some of these feather markings. So I'm just trying to, again, where it is the darkest, I'm just trying to make sure we've got. So while the paper's got a glint on it where it's wet and it's got a glint, it's shiny, it's not flat, then you can still, so you can carry on putting the paint there and working it. So you can see it's slightly darker here and around here. So this section here, that's going to be the darkest section on this side. Okay, and then also down at the bottom here. So if we can get a little bit more of it down at the bottom. Okay, and keep looking at your reference as to which direction the feathers are going. Down here, and then back up into this sort of tear duct section of the eye there. Okay, so let me zoom that back out. So as you can see, we've got the disc section. We've just started to put on some base layers, okay, around here. And then what I'm just going to do now, I'm just going to go around with a clean brush, damp brush. So take most of the water out, and I'm just going to soften these edges to the outer side of the disc. Okay, so we've got some nice soft, we haven't got an hard edge as such, we've got a softer edge. Okay, and same down here, because this is this is going to be lighter, but it needs to be soft, so I want to make it disappear into that lighter area. So what I'm using is a damp brush, and I'm just literally softening away any hard edges that we can see. Just dab along there. We've got a bit of a darker colour there as well. So that's just to part the middle of his face. So that's what we've got there to start with. Okay. I'm going to leave these outer sections here that are white for now. We've got on the top of his head. We've got some more burnt sienna looking colour. So I'm just going to mix up a little bit of burnt sienna. But again, it's got a bit of, let's have a look, some light red. So we've got a little bit of the light red. I'm going to add a little bit of, so I've got the lemon yellow. I'm going to add a bit of the light red, see what we get there. Okay. And then water that down with the pipette. So let's have a look at that on a piece of test paper. So that's the test paper, but it is quite weak. When it dries, it'll be a lot lighter. But if you look at that, that is more or less a match for that. So that's fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wet around this area and just beyond where I want that colour to go. Okay, so it sort of comes down here and then it leaves a little bit at the top. Okay, there. And as long as you paint on the inside of your pencil line, we should be able to get rid of that in a second when it's all done and dried. So we are just putting a base layer on here now. So I'm just there. So you can lighten your pencil lines first if you want. And then I'm just going to fetch that slightly round here. Okay, so a nice watery colour of that. Just get some on the brush, dab it on the dab pad, and then, now if you look, I'm using the point of the brush, and I'm just, because again I want it to go in the direction of which the feathers are formed. Okay, so that there, and then all the way up here. Okay, so again, this is it's a foundation layer, base layer, so it's going to be very light. It comes down here to sort of the middle of the head. Okay, and then put it down here. And then we've got a bit of a dark colour going on here. And then again, just pull it around there. Okay, so I've got nice soft edges there. Again, just clean your brush off and just go around if you want, just to soften any edges away that look a bit harsh. And you can actually lift out some of the colour there, because we have got sort of a lighter patch going on. If you look just in here, we've got some little white patches, so we can put some gouache on at the end. But as well as that, if we can just pull out some colour. There. So that's the base layer for the top of his head. So if you have a look at that. And you see, so you can see the pencil marks, but what I'll do once this is dry, I'm going to go over the outer side. But a lot of those we're going to lose because we've got some dark patches in there. Now, while it's still damp, what I'm going to do is at the top, I'm just going to add a little, it's more or less dry now mine because I'm in the studio. I'm actually just going to do a little bit of going to mix up a bit of the blue and rose madder. So it's like a purpley grey, very watered down. If you look at the top of his head, he has got this. So I'm just going to dab, as you can see, it's still wet at the top of his head. So I'm just going to dab some of this colour in at the top. Okay. So if you look very carefully at the reference photograph, can you see he's got some, and it comes in. So you've got this, so pull it in that direction as well. So it's not extremely, there we go. It comes down a bit here. And on that side it comes in from that angle, there. Okay. Again, just dab the brush off on your dab pad, softening. So I'm dabbing more than anything here, and I just don't want to end up with a very hard edge here. So I'm actually going to lift some of that out there. Okay. And then that's the base layer for that colour there. Okie dokie. So far, I'll zoom back out now. So far we've got the eyes sort of in place. We know where they're going to be. We've now got the base layers down for this top part of his face and around. So the only last bit I want to do before we finish this particular video is I want to put a little bit of burnt umber with the yellow, or I could use yellow ochre for this. Make it very, very, very weak, because if you look at some of his where the disc is, we've got some of this at the edges. We're going to be putting in some of these colours here, but if you look at it at the reference photograph, it's got a yellowy tinge to it. So as I say, you could use just a very, very watered down burnt umber. It'd have to be very watered down. Yeah, that's about it. So I've got this there. So I've just watered down a very, very burnt umber, and then what I'm going to do is just around on the edge here, I'm just going to put in some of this colour, and so it goes right round to the sort of back end of these discs here. You can see them coming down here. Okay, so where the grey is, I'm going to soften it into there. I'm just coming around here. Okay, and then I'm just putting in this very watered and blending it up into that grey that we've got there for his discs. Okay, and then the outer bit is, I'm going to soften that in there, and then just this edge here, I'm just going to soften away. That's going to be going into white. Okay, and once this is dry, what I shall do is I will erase a lot of the rubber, you know, the pencil lines from around this area, and then we can move on to the next stage, which is we're going to actually start then to develop the face, and then we're going to go on and do the body after that. So this is the end of the first video. I hope you've understood it. If you've got any questions, please post them to me. Like I said, have a test pad, which is a piece of paper, which is the same sort of paper you're working on, and use that for testing your colours before you put them on the paper. And we've done the base layers, which are the lightest. So if you look at whatever section you're doing, look for the lightest area of that colour and put that on. And then the same for this, if it changes colour or hue, put the lightest of that on. And then we will build up the rest, and the detail we will build up slowly once this phase has dried. So we've got to let this thoroughly dry now, and then we will go on to the next stage. So I hope that's out for the first level, so the base layers, and good luck with it, and I'll be coming back to you with the next video shortly, so we can continue and build up the detail. Thank you very much.